When Derek Johnson secretly filed for divorce, he thought he was the smartest person in the marriage. He had another woman, hidden money, and a plan to walk away with most of the assets. What he didn't know was that the very woman he was preparing to leave behind was about to uncover something worth more than $500 million. And before this story was over, Derek would learn a painful lesson. Sometimes the person you think you've beaten is the only reason you were winning in the first place. Before we begin, let us know where you're watching from and subscribe for more unforgettable stories. Summer had settled comfortably over Charlotte, North Carolina. The days were long, the evenings were warm, and from the outside, the Brooks Johnson household looked like the kind of home people quietly admired while driving past. At 38 years old, Vanessa Brooks had spent most of her life believing that stability was something a person built one day at a time. She was a tall African-American woman with warm brown eyes, smooth dark skin, and naturally curly black hair that rested just above her shoulders. She wasn't flashy. She wasn't the loudest person in any room. Friends often described her as dependable, thoughtful, and steady under pressure. Vanessa worked as an administrative coordinator for a medical clinic on the east side of Charlotte. And after nearly 15 years in healthcare administration, she had developed a reputation for solving problems before most people even realized they existed. That same approach had shaped her marriage. For almost 10 years, she had been married to Derek Johnson. Derek was 41 years old and carried himself with the confidence of a man who believed every challenge had a solution. Tall and broad-shouldered, with deep brown skin, sharp facial features, and a neatly maintained beard, he was the kind of man who attracted attention without appearing to seek it. He owned a growing commercial consulting business that advised property investors throughout the Southeast. Clients trusted him. Colleagues respected him. Friends often spoke about his ambition as if it were one of his greatest strengths. For many years, Vanessa had agreed. When they first met, Derek had been charming, hard-working, and full of plans for the future. He spoke often about building something meaningful instead of simply making money. Vanessa admired that. Her own father had spent 30 years working maintenance for the city government, and she had grown up believing that character mattered more than appearances. Derek seemed to share those values, or at least she thought he did. Looking back later, Vanessa would realize the changes had started months earlier. Not with some dramatic discovery, not with a single mistake, but with small things easy to dismiss. Derek began traveling more often. Atlanta, Nashville, Dallas, Denver. There always seemed to be another meeting, another conference, another investor who wanted his attention. At first, Vanessa was proud of his success. She encouraged him to take the opportunities. She told friends how hard he worked. Then she started noticing things she couldn't explain. His phone rarely left his hand anymore. Messages appeared and disappeared quickly. Calls were answered outside. Several times she woke during the night and found his side of the bed empty. When she walked downstairs, she would discover him sitting alone on the back patio, staring into the darkness beyond their yard. Whenever she asked what was wrong, he always smiled. "I'm just thinking about work," he would say. The explanation sounded reasonable, yet something about it never felt entirely true. One evening in early July, Vanessa sat across from him during dinner and listened as he described another upcoming trip to Denver. He spoke easily, almost automatically, while scrolling through emails on his phone between bites. She noticed he barely touched his food. She noticed he avoided eye contact. Most of all, she noticed how quickly he changed the subject whenever she asked questions. That night, long after Derek had fallen asleep, Vanessa remained awake staring at the ceiling. She hated what was happening to her. She hated feeling suspicious. Trust had always come naturally to her. But intuition is a difficult thing to silence once it begins speaking. The following Thursday brought a surprise neither of them expected. A staff meeting at Vanessa's clinic was canceled unexpectedly, allowing her to leave work nearly 3 hours early. The afternoon sun was still high when she pulled into the driveway. As she stepped onto the front porch, she noticed a large envelope leaning against the front door. There was no postage, no return address, only her name written across the front. Vanessa carried it inside and placed it on the kitchen counter. For several minutes, she ignored it while unpacking groceries. Eventually, curiosity won. She opened the envelope. The moment she looked inside, her stomach tightened. 3 photographs slid onto the counter. For a few seconds, she simply stared. Then she picked up the first image. The man in the photograph was Derek. There was no possibility of mistake. The same face, the same watch she had given him for his birthday, the same smile. Standing beside him was a younger woman Vanessa had never seen before. The second photograph showed them leaving a luxury apartment building together. The third left little room for innocent explanations. Vanessa slowly lowered the photographs. The kitchen suddenly felt much quieter than before. Her first reaction wasn't anger. It wasn't even sadness. It was disbelief. The strange feeling that reality had somehow shifted without warning. She sat at the kitchen table for a long time. Eventually, she noticed a folded note still inside the envelope. Written in neat block letters was a single sentence. "If you want the truth, check the travel bag." Derek's black leather carry-on sat upstairs in their bedroom closet. Vanessa stared at the note. Then she stood. Part of her felt guilty. Another part reminded her that whatever existed between trust and betrayal had already been broken. The bag contained receipts, business cards, charging cables, and paperwork from recent trips. Nothing unusual, until she opened a small hidden compartment. Inside, she found several documents from a Charlotte family law office. Her hands became cold. She read every page: consultation records, asset evaluations, preliminary divorce paperwork. The dates showed they had been prepared weeks earlier. Derek wasn't considering leaving. He was planning it. As she carefully returned the papers to the compartment, something slipped free and landed on the floor beside her foot. A lottery ticket. Old, slightly creased, almost forgotten. Without thinking much about it, she picked it up and glanced at the drawing date. A few minutes later, she found herself sitting in front of her laptop. The winning numbers appeared on the screen. Vanessa compared the first number, then the second, then the third. Her heartbeat quickened. The fourth matched, the fifth matched, the sixth matched. For several moments, she simply stared, again and again, and again. The jackpot amount displayed at the top of the screen exceeded $500 million. Outside, the summer evening remained peaceful and unchanged. Inside the quiet bedroom, Vanessa Brooks sat motionless, staring at the glowing numbers on her computer screen, slowly realizing that the same afternoon she had discovered her husband's secret affair and hidden divorce plans, she had also discovered a secret capable of changing the rest of her life forever. The days that followed were among the strangest Vanessa Brooks had ever experienced. Every morning she woke up beside a man she no longer trusted. Every evening she sat across the dinner table from someone who seemed completely unaware that his carefully constructed world was beginning to unravel. The photographs remained hidden. The divorce paperwork remained hidden. Most importantly, the lottery ticket remained hidden. Vanessa had purchased a small fireproof lockbox and placed it inside the back corner of a closet where Derek never looked. Surprisingly, the money was not what occupied her thoughts. $500 million should have felt life-changing, yet compared to the betrayal she had discovered, it almost seemed secondary. The ticket represented a possibility. Derek represented a reality. One could wait. The other could not. For several days, she simply watched. She watched the way he carried his phone from room to room. She watched how quickly he responded to certain messages and how casually he ignored others. She watched him smile while discussing plans for the future vacations, and even possible home renovations. Listening to him talk, Vanessa often found herself wondering whether he believed his own lies. Some people become so comfortable with deception that eventually they stop recognizing it. Derek appeared to be one of those people. There was no hesitation in his voice, no visible guilt. If anything, he seemed more relaxed than he had been in months. Vanessa knew she needed help. A week after discovering the photographs, she scheduled a private meeting with Michael Carter, a respected family attorney in Charlotte. Michael was 56 years old, tall and lean with neatly combed silver hair and thoughtful blue eyes that rarely seemed surprised by anything. Decades earlier, his own marriage had ended after his wife left him unexpectedly, an experience that had given him a deep understanding of betrayal and its consequences. He listened carefully while Vanessa explained everything she had discovered. The photographs, the divorce paperwork, the unusual behavior. The lottery ticket was the one thing she chose not to mention. By the time their meeting ended, Michael had filled several pages with notes. Before Vanessa left, he leaned back in his chair and said something that stayed with her for days. When someone is hiding one major secret, they're usually hiding several. The first secret is rarely the whole story. His words proved accurate. The investigation began with financial records. Michael's office requested copies of bank statements, credit card activity, and publicly available business filings connected to Derek's consulting company. At first, nothing appeared dramatic. A transfer here, an unusual expense there. Yet as the records accumulated, a pattern slowly emerged. Small amounts of money had been disappearing from their shared accounts for nearly a year. The transactions were never large enough to attract immediate attention. A few $100s one month, $1,000 the next, sometimes less. Yet when Michael's office added everything together, the total exceeded $40,000. Vanessa stared at the report in disbelief. It was not the amount that shocked her most. It was the patience. Derek had planned this carefully. Month after month, he had quietly moved money while continuing to discuss budgets, household expenses, and retirement plans, as though nothing unusual was happening. Several days later, another piece of the puzzle appeared. Michael called late in the afternoon and informed Vanessa that the woman in the photographs had been identified. Her name was Tiffany Reynolds. She was 32 years old and worked as a luxury real estate consultant in Denver. Tiffany was attractive in a polished, professional way, with long, dark blonde hair, light brown skin, and the confident demeanor often found in people who spent their careers around wealth. According to information Michael had gathered, Tiffany and Derek had been seen together regularly for months. Restaurants, charity events, business gatherings. In several situations, people who knew Tiffany assumed Derek was her partner. Hearing the details hurt, but strangely, it also brought relief. Doubt had finally been replaced by certainty. Vanessa no longer needed to wonder whether she was imagining things. Meanwhile, Derek continued living as though nothing had changed. He returned from trips carrying gifts, asked about Vanessa's workday, and discussed plans for the upcoming holidays. Watching him move through the house became increasingly unsettling. Sometimes Vanessa found herself studying his face while he spoke, searching for some sign of the man she thought she had married. Occasionally, she caught glimpses of him. Then they disappeared just as quickly. The realization was painful. The man she loved still existed in her memories, but she was becoming less certain that he existed anywhere else. Late one Friday afternoon, Michael contacted her again. This time his tone was different, more serious. Within minutes, several documents arrived by email. Vanessa opened them at her kitchen table and immediately understood why he sounded concerned. The paperwork showed that Derek had recently signed a deposit agreement on a luxury lakefront property outside Denver. The house itself was extraordinary, with expansive windows overlooking the water, a private dock, and enough space for an entirely new life. Yet what caught Michael's attention was not the property. It was the money used to secure it. The funds had originated from an account that could not be connected to Derek's known income, business records, or personal assets. Even after several days of investigation, Michael could not identify where the money had come from. As darkness settled outside the kitchen windows, Vanessa sat alone studying the documents spread across the table. Until now, she had believed she was uncovering an affair and a planned divorce. Suddenly, the situation seemed much larger. Somewhere behind the lies, the missing money, and the mysterious property purchase, another secret was waiting. And for the first time since this ordeal began, Vanessa wondered whether she truly knew anything at all about the man sleeping beside her every night. As the investigation continued, Vanessa Brooks slowly came to understand something that was far more painful than the affair itself. Derek's deception had not been a recent mistake. It had been a carefully constructed plan, built piece by piece over several years. The realization arrived gradually, the way daylight slowly reveals damage inside a house that once appeared perfectly sound from the outside. By August, Michael Carter's office had assembled hundreds of pages of financial records, travel histories, business filings, and account statements. The picture that emerged was both detailed and unsettling. Many of the trips Derek claimed were business conferences had never involved conferences at all. Several hotel reservations matched dates when Tiffany Reynolds had been staying in the same city. Restaurant receipts, airline records, and credit card activity placed them together repeatedly. Denver, Scottsdale, Nashville, even a weekend in Santa Fe that Derek had once described as a mandatory investor retreat had apparently been nothing more than a vacation with Tiffany. What surprised Vanessa most was not the evidence itself. It was how naturally Derek had lied. She found herself revisiting old conversations in her mind. Small details that once seemed harmless suddenly carried different meanings. Business dinners that never existed, delayed flights that were never delayed, last-minute meetings that had never been scheduled. Looking back, she realized she had spent years trusting explanations that were never true. One afternoon, Michael invited her to review a collection of newly obtained documents. As Vanessa sat across from his desk, he slid a thick folder toward her. Inside were records connected to several limited liability companies, Derek had quietly established over the previous 4 years. Some were registered in Colorado. Others were registered in Nevada and Texas. None of them had ever been mentioned to Vanessa. The discovery disturbed her more than the affair. An affair could be explained by selfishness. This required planning. Michael carefully explained what his team believed had happened. Derek appeared to have redirected consulting income through multiple business entities, rather than reporting everything through his primary company. The strategy was complicated enough that most spouses would never notice. Over time, significant amounts of money could be hidden from ordinary financial disclosures. As Vanessa listened, a memory suddenly returned to her. 3 years earlier, she had questioned why one of Derek's tax documents looked different than usual. He had laughed, kissed her forehead, and told her she worried too much. At the time, she had felt embarrassed for asking. Now she understood why he had been so eager to change the subject. The weeks that followed revealed even more uncomfortable truths. Through social media posts, archived photographs, and witness statements, Michael's investigators discovered that Derek often spoke very differently about his marriage when Vanessa was not present. Several former business associates described him as charming and charismatic, but a few remembered hearing him joke about his wife in ways that were surprisingly cruel. One former colleague recalled Derek referring to Vanessa as comfortable rather than loved. Another remembered him describing marriage as an arrangement he intended to outgrow once he became financially successful enough. Those comments hurt Vanessa in ways she had not expected. The affair had damaged her trust. The insults damaged her memories. For years, she had believed they were building a future together. Now she found herself wondering whether Derek had ever viewed their marriage the same way. Despite everything, she remained disciplined. She told nobody about the lottery ticket, not even Michael. Every few days, she would verify that the ticket remained secure inside the lockbox and then return her attention to the investigation. The money represented freedom if she ever needed it, but revealing it too early could complicate everything. For now, patience remained her greatest advantage. Meanwhile, Derek appeared increasingly confident. Instead of becoming cautious, he seemed almost relaxed. He talked openly about future plans. He spent more time away from home. He even mentioned the possibility of selling their current house someday, a comment that struck Vanessa as particularly ironic considering what Michael had recently discovered. Late one Thursday afternoon, Michael called and asked her to come to his office immediately. When Vanessa arrived, she noticed several documents already spread across the conference table. Michael looked unusually serious. He adjusted his glasses and pointed toward a packet of legal filings. "I think we finally understand where this is heading," he said quietly. The documents revealed that Derek had begun preparing financial arguments for the upcoming divorce long before Vanessa ever discovered the affair. More troubling still, he appeared to be positioning himself to claim the majority of the marital assets. Hidden income, carefully structured accounts, and selective financial disclosures all seemed designed to support the same objective. For a long moment, Vanessa simply stared at the papers. The affair had never been the final goal. The hidden money had never been the final goal. Derek had been preparing for the divorce itself. And unless someone stopped him, he intended to walk away with most of what they had built together. As summer slowly gave way to early autumn, the divorce mediation date drew closer. And with each passing week, Derek Johnson seemed more convinced that everything was unfolding exactly as he had planned. To Vanessa Brooks, the confidence was almost startling. The more evidence Michael Carter uncovered, the more relaxed Derek appeared to become. It was as though he believed he had already crossed the finish line and was merely waiting for the paperwork to catch up. He spent more nights away from home than before, often claiming business obligations in Denver, and when he was home, he carried himself with an ease that would have seemed completely ordinary had Vanessa not known the truth. What Derek did not realize was that his confidence had become one of the investigation's greatest advantages. People who believe they are winning often stop being careful. Over the following weeks, Michael and his team focused on organizing the mountain of evidence they had collected. There was no dramatic breakthrough anymore, no single shocking discovery. Instead, there was something far more powerful. A pattern. Bank transfers stretching back months. Business entities linked through common addresses. Travel records placing Derek and Tiffany Reynolds together repeatedly. Property documents connected to the lakefront home outside Denver. Separately, each item raised questions. Together, they told a story. One afternoon, Vanessa met Michael at his office to review the final case file. Sitting beside him was Rebecca Lawson, a forensic accountant who had recently joined the investigation. Rebecca was in her early 50s, with short silver blonde hair, light skin, and sharp green eyes that seemed capable of spotting inconsistencies from across a room. 20 years earlier, she had helped uncover a major corporate embezzlement case that nearly destroyed a regional banking firm. And since then, she had developed a reputation for following financial trails other people overlooked. Rebecca spoke quietly, almost gently, but every document she presented seemed to tighten the net around Derek a little further. According to her findings, Derek's hidden financial activities extended far beyond the missing money Vanessa already knew about. Several income streams had never appeared in official household disclosures. Consulting fees had been redirected. Assets had been concealed. Funds had been moved between companies in ways clearly designed to reduce what Vanessa would eventually see during divorce proceedings. None of it was accidental. The planning stretched back years. Listening to the explanation, Vanessa experienced an unexpected feeling: relief. For months she had questioned herself, questioned her judgment, questioned her instincts. Now there was nothing left to question. The evidence spoke for itself. Meanwhile, Derek's future plans were becoming increasingly obvious. Through social media posts and witness statements, Michael's team learned that Derek and Tiffany had begun discussing life after the divorce openly among certain friends. The lakefront property was no longer just an investment. It was being described as a future home. There were discussions about renovations, furniture, and even a private dock expansion. Vanessa found these details painful, but they also revealed something important. Derek genuinely believed he was about to walk away with both his freedom and a significant portion of the marital assets. The mediation was scheduled for a Thursday morning in downtown Charlotte. When the day finally arrived, the city greeted them with clear skies and mild temperatures. Vanessa dressed simply in a navy blue suit and pearl earrings. She wanted no dramatic statements, no emotional performance. She wanted facts. Michael arrived shortly before 9 o'clock carrying several organized binders and a sealed envelope. Rebecca joined them minutes later. The three exchanged only a few words. Months of preparation had already been completed. At exactly 9:15, Derek entered the conference room. For a moment, Vanessa simply observed him. He looked confident, perhaps more confident than she had ever seen him. His charcoal suit was perfectly tailored. His beard was neatly trimmed. His posture projected certainty. Walking beside him was his attorney, Richard Sloan, a well-known divorce lawyer in Charlotte. Richard was a tall man in his early 60s with white hair, narrow features, and a reputation for aggressive negotiation. Throughout his career, he had represented wealthy executives, business owners, and public figures. Winning mattered to him. As everyone settled into their seats, Derek offered Vanessa a polite smile. The smile surprised her, not because it was kind, because it seemed genuine. He truly believed she knew nothing. The mediator began reviewing procedural details. Papers were distributed. Introductions were made. The atmosphere remained professional, almost routine. Yet beneath the surface, Vanessa could feel months of secrets, lies, and hidden plans sitting quietly around the table. Then the discussion turned toward marital assets. Richard Sloan began outlining Derek's position with remarkable confidence. Income estimates, property values, asset division proposals. Every argument appeared carefully prepared. Every number seemed designed to support the conclusion Michael had predicted weeks earlier. Derek was attempting to walk away with the larger share. Vanessa watched him speak, watched the certainty in his expression, watched the future he believed was already waiting for him. Then she glanced toward Michael. The attorney slowly reached for the thick sealed envelope resting beside his files. He placed it carefully on the conference table. The room grew noticeably quieter. Michael looked toward the mediator, then toward Derek and his attorney. Finally, he opened the envelope and said calmly, "Before we begin discussing asset division, there are several pieces of information everyone in this room needs to see." For several seconds after Michael Carter opened the envelope, nobody in the conference room spoke. The silence itself seemed to change the atmosphere. Only moments earlier, Derek Johnson had appeared completely comfortable. Now, as document after document was distributed across the table, that confidence began to fade. Michael moved carefully through the evidence, allowing each fact to speak for itself. There was no dramatic performance, no raised voice, no attempt to embarrass anyone. Years of legal experience had taught him that the truth was usually most powerful when presented calmly. The first documents detailed the hidden transfers from joint accounts. Then came the records connected to the various companies Derek had quietly established in multiple states. Financial statements revealed income streams that had never been disclosed during the marriage. Property records connected him to the lakefront home outside Denver. Travel records placed him repeatedly in the same cities as Tiffany Reynolds. By the time Michael finished, the pattern was impossible to ignore. Richard Sloan reviewed the documents one page at a time. The experienced attorney who had entered the room with such confidence now appeared increasingly concerned. He removed his glasses, rubbed the bridge of his nose, and quietly requested additional time to review several sections. Across the table, Derek's expression had changed completely. For the first time since the mediation began, he looked uncertain. The mediator paused the discussion briefly while both legal teams reviewed the material. Vanessa remained silent. She had imagined this moment many times over the previous months. She expected satisfaction, perhaps even anger. Instead, she felt something entirely different: peace. Not because Derek was being exposed, but because she no longer needed to carry the burden of uncertainty. The truth was finally sitting in the open. When discussions resumed, Richard attempted to negotiate a revised settlement proposal. The strategy was understandable. The evidence had severely weakened Derek's position, but he still hoped to preserve as much as possible. For nearly an hour, lawyers discussed assets, disclosures, transfers, and financial obligations. Then Michael reached for a second folder, a much smaller folder, one that nobody else in the room had seen before. Vanessa immediately recognized it. For months, she had guarded the secret carefully. Now the time had finally come. Michael placed the folder on the table and spoke with the same calm tone he had used throughout the day. There is one additional matter that affects the financial picture. Every person in the room looked toward him. Inside the folder were copies of a lottery ticket, purchase records, verification documents, and ownership confirmations. At first, nobody seemed to understand what they were looking at. Then the mediator noticed the amount. Richard Sloan noticed it next. The room became silent again. The winning ticket was valued at more than $500 million. Derek stared at the paperwork without speaking. For several seconds he appeared genuinely confused. Then realization slowly arrived. His eyes moved from the documents to Vanessa, back to the documents, then back to Vanessa again. Michael calmly explained that the ticket had been purchased using Vanessa's personal funds before the divorce proceedings began. Ownership records, purchase verification, and legal review all confirmed the same conclusion. The ticket belonged entirely to Vanessa. It was not a marital asset subject to division under the circumstances presented. Nobody needed to explain what that meant. Derek understood immediately. The woman he had underestimated, the woman he had lied to, the woman he had planned to leave behind, had become one of the wealthiest people in the region. And there was nothing he could do about it. For the first time during the entire process, Vanessa saw genuine emotion on his face. Not anger, not arrogance. Regret, the kind that arrives too late. The mediation eventually concluded with terms far different from the ones Derek had envisioned months earlier. Hidden assets were addressed. Financial disclosures were corrected. The affair, the transfers, and the concealment efforts all carried consequences. By the time the divorce was finalized, Derek had lost far more than he had expected to gain. Life moved forward. 1 year later, Vanessa stood on the campus of a community college outside Charlotte. Autumn leaves drifted across the sidewalks while students moved between classes carrying backpacks and coffee cups. Behind her stood a newly dedicated scholarship center funded through the Brooks Educational Foundation, an organization she had created using a portion of her lottery winnings. The foundation focused on helping students from working-class families pursue education without overwhelming debt. It was a mission close to Vanessa's heart because she understood how easily opportunities could disappear when financial resources were limited. A small plaque near the entrance displayed the foundation's name, nothing more. Vanessa had never sought publicity. She preferred quiet impact over attention. Later that afternoon, she drove home to a comfortable house overlooking a peaceful lake outside Charlotte. The property was beautiful, but what mattered most was the feeling it provided: security, freedom, peace. As the sun began settling beyond the water, Vanessa sat on the back porch and reflected on the previous year. The betrayal had hurt. The lies had hurt. The realization that her marriage had not been what she believed was perhaps the most painful part of all. Yet she had survived it. More importantly, she had discovered something valuable about herself. The money had changed her circumstances. The truth had changed her life. And in the end, Derek Johnson lost far more than a marriage. He lost the future he could have shared with the one person who had truly believed in him.